Good morning, everyone. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon.
Say your names.
Oh. Fatima Ahmed.
Ryan Hines.
I'm Cedric Sedan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to learn about the properties of matter, which is the stuff all around us. From the air you breathe to the chairs you're sitting on or the water you drink, we are all surrounded by matter.
Okay,
However,
take a deep breath and just slow down a little bit. Okay? So when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to learn about the properties of matter, which is the stuff all around us. From the air you breathe to the chairs you're sitting on or the water you drink, we are all surrounded by matter. However, today we're going to explore about odors to better understand the properties of matter. So, to begin with, can anyone tell me what are some of the smells you guys smell on a daily occasion? On vacation, sorry?
Okay.
What are some of the odors you guys smell on a daily occasion?
Oh, sorry.
Is there any odors you guys smell today? Yes.
Grass, like fresh grass.
Okay.
The smell of rain because it was raining this morning, so we have it.
Nice.
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay, so today we'll be figuring out how we smell things from a distance. So first,
So you want to write that down for them?
I'm just going to pass this jar, which is an odor, and I want you guys to smell it. Okay, so now before we move further along, I want you guys to partner up with somebody, and I will ask some questions so you guys can discuss about it. So just be in a group of 2 or 3.
Good.
Okay, so first, the first question I want you guys to discuss about is just to describe the odor. Not necessarily tell me what the odor is, but just to describe it. So I'll give you 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so how would you guys describe the odor?
Yes. I'm making a reference, so it kind of reminds me of like salt and vinegar chips. Like when I smell that, I immediately associate it with that.
Salt and pepper chips. Does anyone else want to add on that? Yes?
It's more like sour.
Okay, sour.
Yeah.
So does everyone agree with what Ira and Cherish said? Okay, so for the next question, I want you guys to think why you were able to smell the odor. And if you weren't able to smell it, then why do you think that was the case? So again, I'll give you guys 1 or 2 minutes.
The water we were able to smell because it was strong. It was in close proximity to us.
Okay, so for those who are able to smell the odor, why do you think that's the case?
As you said, it was in close proximity to us, so we were able to smell it.
Okay, so the distance. Yes?
It was very concentrated.
Concentrated. And for those who couldn't smell it, do you want to answer why? Like, do you think that's the case? So everyone was able to smell it? Okay, so everyone agrees that those are the reasons why you can smell the odor. So the distance and the concentration matters.
All right, well, on to the next task. Now, as we all know from what we just saw before, this jar contains some very fragrant or pungent vinegar. Now, I'm going to ask you to tell me if you all can smell the vinegar, and I'm going to waft it around when the lid of the jar is on. They are difficult to close, yeah. Okay, so were you all able to kind of smell that vinegar scent when I left the lid on? Okay. How would you describe that? Would you say it was weaker than before, stronger than before?
Sorry, could you actually smell it with the lid on?
Yeah.
It was a little bit open on the side,
That's why.
so we actually continue.
All right. Okay, now I'm just going to go around once again and I'm going to remove the lid so you don't get to smell that wonderful vinegar smell again. Now I'm just going to kind of sit at a distance from you so you don't have to have it in your nose, but I'm just going to waft it around the class. Okay, try to get around the corner here. Once more. I'm sure you're all very in love with this smell. Okay. Now, why do you think it is that when the lid comes off, the strong scent, is more prevalent? Why is it that when I leave the lid on, the smell isn't as, potent? Now, where's
So
it
you
here?
just asked them a question, you need to give them time to respond to it. Okay?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Why do you think that when I take the lid off, the smell is more potent than when I leave the lid on?
It's like stronger, so maybe it's got a higher concentration. I don't know, like there's no barrier between like the vinegar and us smelling it.
Okay.
Because it's escaping.
Oh, okay, well there we go. And that leads us right into our next little bit here. So, what do you think the mechanics of this process are? How do you think that this smell is getting from the jar, the open jar?
Okay, Brian, I want you to take a step back and think about the language that you're using, and if you were working with 8 to 10-year-olds, is that the language you would use when you were doing it, or is there a way that you could reword that? Right, you said what are the mechanics? I'm not sure that an 8 to 10-year-old, is there another way you could say that? Okay.
Yes. So, what do you all think is going on in the air when I take the lid off of that jar? How do you think that smell is getting from the jar to your nose? Now, I'm going to, unless you all have loose paper, I'm going to hand out some loose paper for you.
They have models they can work from.
Do you have individual models? Or?
They have them on their
Oh,
desk.
they have them on their
They have
desks.
models that they're working from.
Oh, okay, great, even better. Okay, so, so you've all drawn individual models, right? You've taken the time to kind of.
No, so here's what we're doing. They have models that they're gonna tell you about. You need to explain models to them. And
Okay.
we're not gonna waste the time on them doing it, but you need to go around and then choose which ones Cedric's gonna share, okay?
Oh, okay.
Or which ones, okay.
Okay. So, let me just go over the board here if you don't mind. Or should I use the other board?
It's entirely up to you. Probably there isn't enough room there.
Yeah, there's not too much room, so I think I'll just move over here. All right. So, sometimes when we're trying to figure out how something works, we can't always see what we're taking a look at. You know, it's not always possible for us to see what we're studying or observing. So, researchers and scientists will draw models to represent what it is they think is going on at a smaller level than we're perhaps able to see. So, in this case, an appropriate model would look something like this. See, we have a representation of a nose over here. And then, let's just say that this is our bowl or jar with whatever substance has vinegar in it today. And then, in this big circle here, we can draw what we think is going on in the air between our nose and the open jar. How do you think that the smell of the vinegar in this jar is traveling to our nose? Because that's obviously something that we can't really see, it's sometimes more appropriate in this sort of situation to draw it out using pictures or symbols or any sort of image that you think might be a good representation of this occurrence. Now you can use any sort of, shapes or images or symbols that you think.
Okay, that's 7 minutes. So now the three of you have 3 minutes to walk around and understand what they're doing in their models, okay? Sorry? So you should be asking them to explain, you can go to separate tables and
Yeah.
asking them to explain their models, and then by the time the 3 minutes are up, you should have some sense of which ones you want to share and why.
Okay, so I'll just take your attention for a few seconds. I just
So
gotta,
see, you're looking at the models now, we're not moving on to your part yet, right? There's 3 minutes for you to understand what models they have,
okay.
okay?
So we have strong I have really strong boundaries. Like sometimes when you just tell me I have to go throw the garbage, and it's like whoop.
All right, and so when you were smelling that garbage, that's kind of what you think is
Yeah,
going on.
yeah, that's exactly what I want.
All right, very interesting. And over here, so how do you think that sounds?
Like when I think of odor, I kind of think of
This
foods,
week,
right?
I think
So I
that's
understand
not
it
really
as
only
in
means
odors travel
wind.
that move
Yeah.
through the air in waves. And these fumes, like they're different than thermal particles and they move in the rooms independently.
So you think that there is a separate ordinance for the odor, a separate odor of the air, and that the odor picks up from there, and then when the air goes towards you. Okay, that's also interesting.
go everywhere. They don't go from the jar to the nose.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, basically, just think of
Odor moves
We
in
don't have to draw.
some areas high concentration, some in low.
So,
It's not visual to those patterns or Yeah.
so if that's the case,
basically we just think that.
why do you think it is
The orders stick together, yeah.
Okay, that's 3 minutes, so now we're ready to start with the last bit.
Okay, so I walked around with my colleagues and I saw a few very interesting sections, drawings for the models. So I would like to have someone in a group in the class explain me their model, and we'll try to represent it on the board. I'll start with student 1.
Me?
Sure.
Do you want me to put it on the projector thing? Or should I just draw it?
Let's put it on the projector.
Yeah.
Make it faster. Thank you very much. Ask your seats, I'll ask you questions. Okay, great. So we have here a model. I would like you to explain it a little.
Okay. So basically, like, how I think of it is, I think of odor as in fumes, and like they travel through the air in waves, and these fumes are different than air or particles, and like they move in their own independent way. And I actually have really bad memories of odor. My mom would tell me to throw out the garbage, and that's when I would realize, like, oh my goodness, like it smells so strong. It's kind of like the fumes are very intense. So that's how I thought of it.
Question for you. Why did you decide to draw that type of shape instead of just a straight line? Is there any meaning behind the shape that you used to draw?
That's actually a really good question. It kind of explains like the way in which it travels. So that's why I decided to
Right, so you
draw
imagine-
squiggly lines.
So you imagine it going a certain distance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Perfect. So I would like to ask another group, or anyone who's students in groups, if they could explain me what they understand, or maybe don't understand, or what you think is missing. So I'll first ask what you understand or don't understand. Is there anyone who would be able to be willing to share? If not, I'll pick one. Have you? So okay, great. Yes.
What I understand about that?
Yes, or don't.
I think I understand that the smell is kind of like squiggling out,
Okay. Great.
and then it goes in my nose.
And it goes in your nose.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Interesting. And is there something that you think is missing in this section? I mean, in this model.
I don't know the squiggly lines. I don't know if that's what smell looks like.
It's kind of the way in which it
Okay.
moves.
Okay, so then you might ask him what he thinks it looks like to get them to share their model.
Right. So, so you told me that you see things differently. You think there's something missing here. So let's try to maybe have you compare your model with the first model and try to see what are the main differences and compare the different concepts between the two.
Yeah. You want me to bring it up?
Please.
Whoa, hold on. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, we're back to see this. So I'll first ask you to tell me what you think really differs from the two. What do you think is the main difference between the two models?
Mine are like little pieces of art, actually. It's like little pieces of air and little pieces of smell.
Okay.
And like when I was small, my dad used to carry me like on his shoulders, and that's what I think the smell is doing to the air. It's carrying it on its like shoulders.
Okay, so here we have separate parts, and here, what would be the difference between this one?
Maybe it's like a bunch of
Connected.
connected ones together.
So we have difference. So how would you phrase that? Define that it's separated and connected. How would you have it?
I think I would just say it like that. That one is separate and one is connected. I don't know how else to do that.
Okay, so according to one of us, it's separated. And one says it's connected. Okay, it's small, but I'll try to make it bigger next time. So it's separated and connected. And I'll ask someone else to tell me what they see as a difference between the two. There's another component. Maybe someone from this side, or someone who would see another difference between the two models.
Somebody help me out, please.
Well, I saw do I?
Because he's
Well, it
asking
comes
for a difference between those two up there.
Yes.
Well, there's particles on the top one, and the other one I see just squiggly lines. So
Okay.
it's different.
Okay. So do you think this is the same thing as what we said, separated and connected? Define the squiggly lines and find this part. Would you say it's the same definition, or you think you're finding a different difference?
I think there's two things making up the top one versus the bottom one. I see there's just one.
Okay, so here we have only one smell, and here in the other one we have different stuff. We have air, and we have right. So we would say air affects smell, or
Yeah.
it's combined with smell. And would you say that it's through traveling, or both having a traveling aspect? This one seems to be moving. Is this one moving?
Okay, so now you're telling them something instead of asking the people who produce the models. So you might want to go back to the people who produce the models and ask if it's moving. Because I don't think that came up. Okay?
Okay. So you guys made the models. So I would like to know, when you made it, did you have the intention to say that there's a traveling happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So for my model, it's actually moving in waves. It's in a wave-like motion.
Wait. Okay. So there's travel.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the second model, would you say the same thing or no?
I think that the wind makes it travel, so there's something that's pushing it, it travels.
Okay,
So-
that's 7 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, so I would like to summarize the points.
Okay, we're done.
We're done. Okay, we're done. So thank you very much for everything, and
Okay, so you guys all spoke really clearly. I could hear you all the way to the back to the room, so that was great because often that's hard to do, to project your voice all the way to the back. One of the things that I would think about when you're looking back at the videotape is your use of the boards, because I think there were many things that you spoke about at the beginning that you didn't write down, and that as you move through a lesson you want to pick up again, right? There are going to be initial ideas. So I think the planning of how you use the boards also needs to be thought through a little more. Not one of you set the expectations for the class. So how is it that you wanted them to kind of take part in the lesson? Did you want them to put up their hands? They were being very good students for you, right? They were putting up their hands, but Cedric, for instance, you clearly wanted them to put their things up and go back to their seats, but that expectation wasn't set, so you had to repeat it over and over and over again, right? So think about setting the expectations. In the first part, I think you went too quickly to focusing on in on vinegar and you didn't focus so much on what their prior experiences were with odors to get them to really into the lesson and think about it. Ryan, in part 2, I know that ammonia stinks, but there's a reason to change the odors in between part 1 and part 2, right? So think that through a little bit more when you're looking back at the lesson. And also think about what do you do when something goes wrong, right? There was spilled vinegar on the outside of your jar, so they smelled it even though the jar was closed, right? And you want to kind of get to that point where they're saying, oh, when something's closed, I can't actually smell it. You want them to think about there's a difference between that jar being open and closed. Also, just be careful of the kind of language that you're using all the way throughout. And when you ask a question, again, when you look back at the video, just look at how long you're giving them to respond. I think you need to wait a little bit longer, okay? And then, oh, wait, there was something else. Oh, also just pay attention to when they're giving you ideas, right? This is the beginning of the lesson, and we're just trying to get people's ideas. We're not really judging one or the other. And there's a key moment in this video, I think you will see it, when they gave you something you were expecting to see, and you sort of said, yes, we can move on now. And what we want to do is kind of encourage everybody to participate. So when you do that, you might be shutting down your participation. In part 3, I would look back at sort of the questioning you're doing, also those expectations that are set and how you're getting them to compare at things. Instead of saying, do you think there's anything missing, right, which kind of suggests to some of the groups, oh, you've done something wrong, you can say to the groups instead maybe, like, do you want to add anything here? Because then it's sort of phrasing the question a bit more positively. Your writing's a little small on the board, Cedric, so you're going to want to think about that. And one of the things also when you look back here, you look at this idea of separated and connected, because I'm not sure that those ideas were written down completely enough that they were able to be built on, because when we came back to it, I wasn't even sure what we were talking about anymore. So think about what is it that you write down that helps them build upon their ideas. So I'm wondering if anybody else has feedback, things that you think they can improve, things that they did well, other thoughts?
Maybe write a little bit bigger. I can't see this.
Yes.
Maybe if we were all saying things, like you could have drew it in the model to make a consensual model from the two.
Yeah.
On the paper?
On the board, the model that is there, like where you were writing.
Right.
If we all said particles, like you could have just drew them in.
I think that there is like quite a bit of you're able to do well. Like, say, have fun. Don't be so scared of it being scripted, man. Just like, I don't know, talk like as if you're just talking to anybody else.
I mean, it's hard, right? Because it's one of the first times you're doing this, so that's not a problem. But it is, if you kind of decide to have a little more fun with it, sometimes it's a little bit easier. But yeah, anybody else? Okay, so take pictures of your boards, but thank you very much.